Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. Today I'm going to be sharing the 7 pens that I have inked up for June of 2024 and the inks that I put in them as well. I'll be doing some bigger swatches and then also reviewing the theme that I was going with for this month. But my first pen that I had inked up is my Lamy Safari in Cream. This is the only Lamy Safari that I have. I've been very tempted to get the green one with the gold clip recently, but I'm not really willing to pay the price for it since it is like an international pen. Anyways, yeah, this is inked up with Robert Oster's Peach, and it has a broad nib. And this combination has been very pleasant. I love the Lamy broad nib. It is juicy while flowing and smooth, and combined with the pen body of the Lamy being very comfortable in my hand personally, I really like this combination. The ink itself is very legible, but I'll talk more about that with the ink swatch. I recently shared this ink actually in my orange ink exploration, which was the last ink exploration video I did, I believe. And the swatch in that exploration video does not do it justice at all. So in this swatch, you will definitely be able to see a lot more of the shading properties that this ink does have. It has this beautiful kind of orangey red halo going on. The shading goes from like a light orangey yellow citrus color to more of a muddy orange. It's beautiful. Peach is a really perfect name for this color. It's giving the summertime vibes that I wanted, and it is very legible, and I can definitely appreciate that about a lighter colored ink. The next pen I had inked up is a Jinhao 82 Franken pen. I believe the body of this is called the fluorescent coffee model, but the finials I took off of one of the white pens, and then also the grip section I took off of another pen. So I just made my own cute little coffee colored latte pen. Yeah, these pens are just so fun and inexpensive. Anyways, this has a medium nib, and it is inked up with Van Dieman's Peanut Brittle. Overall, again, this has been a very pleasant writing experience so far. I love the warm yellow ochre brown of this ink matching with the brown of this pen. I don't often match pens and inks together, but I'm really happy with this combination. The pen itself is definitely a very affordable pen, and it feels that way when you write with it. It has a very cheap plasticky feel to it, which doesn't really bother me, but it may bother some. And the nib isn't the smoothest. It does have a little bit of a drag to it on the paper, but for the price of the pen, I can't complain. It behaves like the price that it is. The peanut brittle ink itself, like I was saying, is a nice yellowy toned warm brown. It does have a beautiful shading with it and just is a lovely consistency. I do think it is kind of in the middle of consistency. It's not super wet, at least not in this pen, but it's also not dry, so it's kind of like in the middle. I do think it performed very well in this Jinhao. I had no problems with it whatsoever. Yeah, it was a wonderful combination. It definitely fit my theme, and I really enjoy the color of this brown, and I kind of want to get a bottle of it since I only have a sample, but I'm gonna hold off because I feel like I have a lot of warm brown inks in my collection. The third pen that I had inked up for the month of June is my Ferris Press brush fountain pen. This has a 14 karat plated gold nib, and it is a medium, and I inked this up with Taccia's Benitsuchi, and I have thoughts again about this pen. And those thoughts aren't necessarily positive ones. I find that this pen writes really dry. I honestly have not found an ink that I like in this pen yet. I really thought this was going to be a really great pairing just because Taccia inks are very well flowing. And it started off great, but the more I wrote with this pen, it just got worse and worse. I still don't know what I'm going to put in this pen to help it. I've tried lots of different things at this point. As for the ink, the Taccia's Benitsuchi is beautiful. One of my favorite inks from Taccia, honestly. It has this beautiful red, brown, orange muddiness to it. It's fantastic. It does have a bit of a black sheen to it as well. It's not super strong, but it does come out in broader nibs. I adore this ink. One thing I was really hopeful, like I said, is that this ink would be well flowing enough to fix the dryness in this pen, or at least make this pen a little bit easier to write with. I just did not have that luck, which I'm really, really disappointed with. Also, this is the Majestic Maple colorway of this pen. I don't know if I mentioned that. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this pen. I'm kind of getting to the point where I may sell it just because I can't find a way to use it that I'm happy with, but I haven't really made that jump yet. I'm still considering, but this ink, fantastic. This pen still needs a bit of work. The next pen I had inked up is the only pink pen in my collection, and this is my Pilot Prera in Vivid Pink with a medium nib that I had to reconstruct, and I don't know if I've told that story, but I'll tell it. And this has Pilot Iroshizuku's Tsutsuji in it. So I really enjoy this as a pocket pen. It's very nice and short. It's the same size as like a Sailor Pro Gear Slim, or even that Jinhao 82 I just showed. I think it's also the same size as a Pelikan M200. Anyways, what happened was I ended up dropping this pen some time ago, and it fell, of course, nib first, and the nib got dented inwards, and I had to do some reconstruction of the tines. And being that I am an amateur when it comes to nib fixing, I guess, I ended up kind of just, I guess, misaligning them slightly, and I've slowly worked them back together over time. But this pen does have really hard starts as a result of my nib problems. I will say, when I do get it writing, it writes beautifully. It's fantastic. It's just getting it started on that first run after it's been sitting for a little while is kind of a challenge. I do also think that is very common in the more affordable Pilot pens like the Pilot Metropolitans, Pilot Kakunos. Just because of the way the feeds are done, it's a little bit different than your typical fountain pen feed. I think they just have a little bit of a harder time starting. At least in my experience and what I've experienced, especially with this pen because of my nib accident. As for the ink, Pilot Iroshizuku's Tsutsuji, also known as Azalea, I believe is the translation, is probably one of my favorite pink inks to write with just because of how saturated and bold it is. It is a beautiful hot pink color. It has a little bit of a redness to it, but when it dries down, it has this golden greenish sheen, a bit more golden than green, but it's beautiful. Also, Pilot Iroshizuku inks are some of my favorite line of inks out there. They always behave incredibly well no matter what I put them in, and even with this pen and its hard starts because of my nib problems, it still did fabulously. I'm ultimately happy with this pairing. Even though the nib had some hard starts, it's still probably one of my favorite pens that I was able to write with so far for this month. The next pen that I had inked up for June is probably one of my all-time favorite pens at this point. This is my Esterbrook Estie in the Tortoise Gold hardware. This has a fine Esterbrook nib on it, which is my favorite Esterbrook nib, and it was inked up with Wearingeul's Dorothy. This pen is honestly one of my favorite writers. Just the size of the pen, the weight of the pen, the way it sits in my hand. I just love the feel of this pen when writing. I love the nib experience. Even though it is not a gold nib, it's a steel nib. It's just fantastic. I love writing with this. I honestly can write hours with this pen, and it's just really pleasant. The only negative thing I have to say about it is that posting wise, putting the cap on the end of this pen is not very practical for me, but I don't usually write with my pens posted unless I take it somewhere on the go. Like if I'm at the library, I want to post my pen so I don't lose the cap accidentally at the library. But other than that, probably one of my favorite pens of all time. Just a wonderful writing experience. As for the ink, here is the bottle of Wearingeul Dorothy that I have. This is a recent purchase for me. I got a sample of Dorothy from Goulet Pens and just fell in love, honestly, with the entire Wizard of Oz collection. So I ended up getting a gift box, I think, of all 4 inks. I'm not really sure how many came with it, but this one was definitely one of my ultimate favorites, and I just love it because it's a nice dusty blue color. Like I said, it's a beautiful dusty blue color. It has this gorgeous shading that goes from like a lighter, almost like denim blue to a deeper denim blue. It's so nice. I don't really understand the color with the name Dorothy, if it is from the Wizard of Oz, maybe because of the smock or dress that Dorothy wore. I don't really remember a lot about the original story. I know she had silver shoes in the original story instead of ruby slippers, but nonetheless, it's a beautiful color. I love the shading in this fine nib with the Estie. It did a wonderful job showcasing that, and it wrote very well flowing. Typically, Wearingeul inks have some that are really dry and some that are really wet and some that are in the middle, and this one I found to be one in the middle, which I definitely can appreciate. The second to last pen that I had inked up for June is this cutie right here. This is a Travelers Company brass fountain pen. It has patinaed quite a bit since I originally got it, I think last year in 2023. And I just love how tiny the bottom piece is, and then when you put the cap on it, it makes it like a full-size pen. It's just so cute. I love this. This has a fine nib, and I inked it up with Birmingham Pen Company's Eroded Bronze. And this combination was really lovely, but I didn't expect the ink to be so close to the other ink that I just did, Dorothy. I didn't expect them to be so close together. But the pen itself is one of my favorite writers. It's really easy to take with me. I'm not worried about just beating this pen up because it is entirely made of brass. It has a bit of a weight to it, which I like since it is a smaller pen. It feels more comfortable since it has a bit more of a weight to it. But my only complaint is actually the nib. It is a fine nib and it does write really standard. I've debated on taking a brass sheet to the nib to see if I can get the flow a little bit more juicy, but I haven't committed yet. But I know that you can buy replacement nibs for this pen, so I may see if I can get a medium and see if I like that a bit more, but I haven't, again, made that plunge just yet. Birmingham Pen Company's Eroded Bronze is another kind of dusty-ish blue, but it has this gorgeous, like, pink shade to it in some areas. Very dynamic, very interesting ink. I have ranted and raved about Birmingham Pen Company for months now, it seems. Seriously, one of my favorite ink brands of all time now. I just am obsessed with this brand of inks. This color I was not expecting to be so close to Wearingeul's Dorothy. In the swatches, you can clearly see they are very, very different. But in writing, when they're next to each other, they look very, very similar, which I find really, really interesting. The Esterbrook Estie Fine is much broader than the Traveler's Fine, so it showcases more of the shading in Dorothy. But with the Traveler's Fine, I feel like it gave an overall base color of the blue. So I don't know. I definitely want to put Eroded Bronze in another pen just to get more of the shading out of it. Just because the shading is beautiful, but overall the combination was really nice. And the last pen that I had inked up for the month of June is my TWSBI Smoke and Rose Gold. This has a stub 1.1 nib on it, and I inked this up with Diamine's Purple Ink Vent color Moonbeam. And this pen and ink pairing has been wonderful. I honestly love putting shimmering inks, especially Diamine shimmering inks, in my TWSBI with a stub nib, just because it's such a pleasant stub nib to write with. It's always juicy, well flowing, it makes everything look really nice, gives the dynamic diversity of the shimmer to the ink color. Really, really lovely experience when showcasing a really fun ink. My only issue with this pairing was it was actually a bit drier than normal. So I don't know if it's this ink in particular, the new one from Diamine, the Moonbeam from the Purple Ink Vent, or if I just didn't clean the pen well enough from the last time I inked it up. There could be a couple of factors dealing with that, but it was still really pleasant. It just wasn't as juicy as I normally experience with this pen. Here is the very tiny bottle of Moonbeam that I have. You can see the shimmer down here on the bottom. It's kind of like teal to silver, a little bit of green, a little bit of pink going on. It's just a really cool chameleon shimmer, and this is one of their chameleon inks from the ink vent. This ink is a gorgeous gray with a bit of a green undertone and, like I mentioned, a whole bunch of different chameleon-like shimmer colors in it. I find that this primarily looks kind of green, blue, silver, and then on the other angle it's more of like a pinkish silver. So I don't know which colors technically are the chameleon aspect of it, but it definitely has a range of colors in it. Gray wise, it is a nice warm, again, green toned gray. The shimmer complements it very well, but like I mentioned with the pen, it's just it was a little bit drier than I was anticipating with this combination. Again, I don't know if it's the ink in particular I need to play around with a little bit more, or it could just be that the pen, I didn't clean it well enough, or there's a clog in the feed or something. With shimmer inks, it's kind of hit or miss depending on the ink itself, I guess. Overall though, I really enjoy this color. It is beautiful. Doesn't have a whole lot of shading, but the shimmer and the base of the green is just really, really nice together. So now it is time for me to talk a bit about the theme that I went for this month of June. And I definitely wanted to go for more of a summery vibe, summery theme. So I couldn't really decide on if I wanted to name it Summer Fun or just Summer Adventure. I couldn't pick, but the reason why I want to call it this is because I have my snacks. I have Peach by Robert Oster and I have Peanut Brittle by Van Diemen's. And then for the more, I guess, adventure side of things, the Benitsuchi ink is based off of Mount Fuji, I believe, which is a pretty big adventure, I would say. And then Azalea or Tsutsuji by Pilot Iroshizuku could be more of like summer fun because there's beautiful flowers still in bloom in summer. And then for Dorothy, she goes on an adventure in the Wizard of Oz, obviously going down the yellow brick road, meeting the Wizard of Oz and her whole adventure. And then Eroded Bronze, I don't really know how that one fits in here. Maybe that could be like whatever tools I'm carrying on my adventure are made from eroded bronze, which kind of sounds like they're broken, but anyways. And then Moonbeam is just kind of like, yeah, it's a nice, cool summer evening and I'm just having fun in the moonlight. I don't know. That one's kind of like meh. The last two were kind of just last minute choices, if I'm being honest. But I had a lot of fun writing with all these inks, and I definitely enjoyed probably the Esterbrook Estie the most, just because that's been a favorite writer for a really long time. And then after that, you know, the Lamy Safari has been a dream with the peach ink in it. And then also the Pilot Prera, even though I had some really hard starts because of my nib faults, it's just been really pleasant with that Pilot Iroshizuku ink. Overall, really happy with all of my choices, but definitely have some top ones in this group. Like I just mentioned, top ones are definitely the Esterbrook Estie and the Tortoise with the Wearingeul's Dorothy in it, the Lamy Safari with Robert Oster's Peach, and even my Pilot Prera with the Pilot Iroshizuku Tsutsuji. Jeez. I just really enjoy well-flowing inks and well-flowing pens, and those three definitely worked really well for me. I do want to play around some more with my Pilot Prera nib, just because I know I didn't do the best job in repairing it, and I think I could definitely make it a little bit better of an experience, if I'm being honest. In review of the inks themselves, here is what they all look like together. I really liked this color scheme, really fun to play with. I do think it's interesting how close the Robert Oster Peach and Van Diemen's Peanut Brittle look in swatch. You can definitely see that this one's a bit browner, but in writing they are entirely different. So in writing you can see how definitely orange this is and how definitely brown this is, but next to each other they do look very, very similar. For the other inks that I did, the Benitsuchi and the Tsutsuji, I mean, I love these two together. I would definitely say color-wise, the Tsutsuji is bright and powerful, and the little bit of yellow sheen that it has, I don't know if the camera is going to pick that up, but it's beautiful. And then for the Benitsuchi, it's a beautiful color. I do get questions about Benitsuchi and how close it is to Ancient Copper or even the Ginger Chicken by Dominant Industry. I find it's in a category all on its own. It's a bit redder. It's not quite as orange as those two inks, but it is very, very pretty. And then maybe I can get the sheen to show up right now since we're super close to the camera. Maybe. You might be able to see the yellowish green sheen that this thing has. It's beautiful. And then the fact that my two blue inks looked so different in swatches, but look so similar in writing, it's amazing. I love the shading in both of these inks though. They're both fantastic. I do think that the Wearingeul Dorothy is just a bit more of a winner for me, even though the chroma shading in the Eroded Bronze is beautiful. I just think that the dynamic shading in the Dorothy is more up my alley. I'm gonna see if I can get this to focus. Hold on. So yeah, the shading within the Dorothy is just beautiful in writing. And then I love the more dusty denim look of this ink. The Eroded bronze is definitely more, I guess, warmer. It has a bit more of a yellowness to it, especially on camera. It's showing very teal on camera. In person, it's a little bit more blurple, like purpley blue. But the shading does not necessarily come through very well with the Travelers Company fine nib. So I definitely want to try this ink in a broader pen. Maybe I'll put it in the Lamy Safari at some point because I feel like that pen does a very good job of showing shading. It's just, I didn't love this combination. It wrote really well. I just didn't love how fine the writing was. Like I wanted more. I just wanted more. And then the last ink being Diamine Moonbeam. I do think the shimmer on this is just ultimately amazing. You can definitely see the blue shimmer here. And then if I change, I don't know if I'll be able to get the pink shimmer to show up, but it does have a bit of a pink shimmer to it as well. That is just really, really cool. I mean, you might be able to see it if I hold it like super sideways. I don't know, but the shimmer in it's beautiful for this one. I do think that it is probably a bit drier of an ink. Typically Diamond has a range of dry to wet, and I think this one's just a little bit more on the dry side. I didn't have any hard starts or any problems with the TWSBI 1.1, but I do think if I put this in probably a medium nib, it would not behave like I would want. I think I would definitely want to put this in the stub that I did, or even a broad at the smallest. But shimmer inks are finicky in general. Really happy with my theme, and as always, love to hear what you guys think about it. If you have a different name that you think this would go really well with, or if you have any fun inks that you use this month, I'd love to chat about it down in the comments. This is just a really fun way for me to use my inks and my pens and kind of figure out, you know, what I really like and what I don't like. And I definitely think I had some winners and some losers with this group. Anyways, I want to thank you so much for watching, for joining me here today. If you have any questions about any of the supplies I used today, just let me know. I'm always happy to chat about different things that I like to use in my videos. But yeah, thanks again for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.